April 1945. 32 German women surrendered to American forces. Their uniforms were falling apart, buttons broken, fabric torn. They had nothing underneath. Military rules said all prisoners must be stripped and searched. The women begged for mercy, trembling with fear and shame. What happened next shocked everyone. The American commander made a decision that no one expected. This is their incredible true story. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The cold April wind of 1945 swept through the ruins of a small German town near the Elbe River. The war was ending, and everyone knew it. The sound of Allied artillery had been growing louder for days, and now the American forces were finally here. Among the chaos stood a group of 32 women in Wehrmacht auxiliary uniforms. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense, but they had served the German military as radio operators, clerks, and medical assistants. Now, with their units scattered and their commanding officers fled, they faced an uncertain future. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell of the U.S. Army stood before them, clipboard in hand. She was 26 years old, a former schoolteacher from Ohio who had joined the military to serve her country. She had seen many things during the war, but this situation was different. These were women, not hardened soldiers, and many of them looked terrified. "Does anyone speak English?" Sarah asked, her voice firm but not unkind. A young woman stepped forward. Her uniform was dirty and torn, but she held herself with dignity. "I do," she said quietly. "My name is Anna Weber. I learned English in school before the war." Sarah nodded. "Tell the others they are now prisoners of war. They will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. We will provide food, water, and shelter. But first, we need to process you all." Anna translated, and Sarah watched the reactions. Some women looked relieved, others remained fearful. One elderly woman began to cry softly. The processing began in an old warehouse that had somehow survived the bombing. The American soldiers set up tables and chairs, and one by one, the women were called forward to give their names, ranks, and personal information. It was during this process that the problem arose. Private Johnson, a young man from Texas, approached Lieutenant Mitchell with a concerned expression. "Ma'am, we have a situation." Sarah looked up from her paperwork. "What is it?" "It's the women's uniforms, ma'am. Well, some of them say they cannot remove them." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean they cannot remove them?" "We need to check for weapons and provide them with clean clothes." Johnson shifted uncomfortably. "That's just it, ma'am. Some of the uniforms, the women say the buttons and zippers are broken or stuck. And some of them, their uniforms are so worn that if they try to take them off, the fabric might tear completely. They have nothing underneath, ma'am. Nothing at all." Sarah felt her face grow warm. This was indeed a problem. The protocol was clear, all prisoners had to be searched and provided with prisoner uniforms. But she had not anticipated this particular complication. She walked over to where Anna stood with a group of women. "Anna, I need you to translate carefully. I understand some of you have difficulties with your uniforms. Can you explain the situation to me?" Anna nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yes, Lieutenant. You must understand, we have been on the move for weeks. We fled from the Eastern Front. Many of us lost our belongings. Our uniforms are all we have. Some of the fasteners are broken. The fabric is very thin in places. And..." She hesitated. "And..." Sarah prompted gently. "And we have no undergarments, Lieutenant. They wore out long ago, and there were no replacements. If we remove our uniforms, we will have nothing. We will be completely naked. It is..." Anna's voice dropped to a whisper. "It is very shameful for us." Sarah understood immediately. These women had already lost so much, their country was defeated, their homes possibly destroyed, their futures uncertain. To strip them of their last shred of dignity would be cruel. But she also had her orders and her duty. Sarah called together her senior staff, Captain Morrison, Sergeant Davis, and Corporal Williams, who was one of the few other women in the unit. "We have a problem," Sarah began, explaining the situation. Captain Morrison, a gruff man in his 40s, shook his head. "Orders are orders, Lieutenant. They need to be processed like any other POWs. With respect, sir, these are not ordinary circumstances," Sarah replied. "These women have been through hell. They're not combat soldiers. They're clerks and nurses. And they're asking for basic human dignity." Sergeant Davis, who had 3 daughters back home, spoke up. "The lieutenant has a point, Captain. If these were our own women in the same situation, how would we want them treated?" Corporal Williams added, "We could work out a compromise, sir. We don't have to strip them bare to ensure they're not a threat." Captain Morrison rubbed his tired face. The war had aged him considerably. "What do you propose, Lieutenant?" Sarah had been thinking about this. "We conduct the searches differently. We use the women in our unit to do physical searches over the clothing. We check pockets, boots, anywhere weapons could be hidden. We provide them with blankets and allow them to change in private, one at a time, into whatever clean clothes we can spare. We give them time to wash and repair their uniforms if they want to keep them." "That's against standard procedure," Morrison pointed out. "Yes, sir, it is. But standard procedure didn't account for women who have nothing but the clothes on their backs and whose clothes are literally falling apart." Morrison was silent for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. "Do it your way, Lieutenant. But if this comes back on us, it's your responsibility." "Understood, sir. Thank you." Sarah returned to the warehouse where the women waited. Through Anna, she explained the new plan. "We understand your situation," Sarah said, and Anna translated. "We will not force you to remove your uniforms immediately. Instead, we will conduct searches with female personnel while you remain clothed. Then we will provide you with what clean clothing we have available. You may change in private, one at a time, in a separate room. We will also provide washing facilities so you can clean your current uniforms if you wish to keep them." The relief on the women's faces was immediate and visible. Several began to cry. One older woman, who had been particularly frightened, clasped her hands together and said something in rapid German. "She says God bless you," Anna translated, her own eyes glistening with tears. "She says you are showing us mercy we do not deserve." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "Tell her that all human beings deserve basic dignity and respect, regardless of what uniform they wear." The processing continued under the new system. Corporal Williams and 2 other female soldiers conducted careful but respectful searches. They checked pockets, looked inside boots, and patted down the women's clothing. They found no weapons, only personal items, photographs, letters, a few pieces of jewelry. Meanwhile, Sarah organized the distribution of clothing. The American forces had captured a German supply depot the week before, and it contained civilian clothing that had been stored for distribution. Sarah requisitioned dresses, skirts, blouses, and undergarments. They were simple and plain, but they were clean and intact. One by one, the women were taken to a private room to change. As each emerged in clean civilian clothes, carrying their military uniforms folded carefully, something remarkable happened. They looked different. The fear in their eyes had lessened. Some even managed small smiles. That evening, after the initial processing was complete, Sarah found Anna sitting alone, staring at her folded uniform. "May I sit?" Sarah asked. Anna nodded. "Of course, Lieutenant." They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Your English is excellent. Where did you learn?" My father was a professor of languages at the university in Berlin, Anna replied. Before the war, I wanted to be a teacher too. I loved English and American literature. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Steinbeck. I dreamed of visiting America someday. Why did you join the Wehrmacht Auxiliary? Anna smiled sadly. I did not have much choice. In 1943, all young women were required to serve in some capacity. I was fortunate, I suppose. Because of my education, they made me a radio operator rather than sending me to a factory. I thought I would be safe, far from the fighting. But you ended up running from the Eastern Front. Yes. Anna's voice became quiet. The Russians were coming. We heard terrible stories about what they did to German women. Our unit was ordered to evacuate. We traveled on foot for weeks. Some of the women did not make it. They died from cold, from hunger, from exhaustion. I kept my uniform because I thought it might protect me somehow. That if I looked like a soldier, perhaps no one would hurt me. Sarah listened quietly, recognizing the shared humanity in Anna's story despite the different uniforms they wore. What will happen to us now? Anna asked. You'll be held in a POW camp temporarily. But the war is nearly over. Germany will surrender soon. Then you'll be released to return home. Or. Sarah paused. Or if your home is in the Soviet zone, you might choose to go elsewhere. There will be opportunities for displaced persons to resettle. Anna looked at her uniform again. I do not know if I have a home to return to. Berlin has been heavily bombed. My family's house may be gone. My father, my mother, my younger brother, I have not heard from them in 8 months. Sarah reached over and gently touched Anna's hand. I'm sorry. War is terrible for everyone it touches. Thank you for what you did today, Lieutenant. For allowing us to keep our dignity. Some of the other women, they said that Russian or German soldiers would not have been so kind. They said we expected to be. Anna couldn't finish the sentence. You're under American protection now, Sarah said firmly. No one will harm you. The women were housed in a large barn that had been cleaned and fitted with cots and blankets. It was basic but warm and dry, far better than the conditions they had endured during their flight from the east. As night fell, Sarah made her rounds to ensure everything was in order. She could hear the women talking quietly among themselves. Some were crying softly. Others were sharing what little food they had managed to keep hidden in their belongings. Private Johnson approached her. Lieutenant, one of the women is sick. She's running a fever and coughing badly. Sarah went immediately to investigate. A woman in her early 30s lay on a cot, shivering despite the blankets piled on her. Anna was kneeling beside her, holding her hand. This is Greta, Anna explained. She has been ill for several days, but she tried to hide it. She was afraid of being left behind. Sarah felt Greta's forehead. She was burning with fever. We need to get her to the medical tent immediately. Will she be okay? Anna asked, worry evident in her voice. Our doctors will do everything they can, Sarah promised. 2 soldiers carried Greta on a stretcher to the field hospital. Sarah followed, and Anna came too, translating when necessary. The American doctor, Captain Roberts, examined Greta thoroughly. Pneumonia, he announced. Probably been developing for a while. She's severely malnourished too, which weakened her immune system. We'll start her on sulfa drugs and get some fluids into her. Will she survive? Anna asked directly. Captain Roberts looked at her seriously. I'll be honest with you, she's very sick. But she's getting treatment now, and she's young enough to fight this off. I've seen worse cases recover. Anna translated for Greta, who managed a weak smile and whispered something. She says thank you, Anna told the doctor. She says she cannot believe Americans are helping her when we were enemies. Captain Roberts, who had seen enough death and suffering to last a lifetime, replied simply, "The war is over for her. Now she's just a sick woman who needs help. That's all that matters." Over the next few days, a routine developed. The women were allowed to wash their clothing and themselves. They received 3 meals a day, simple but nutritious food that was a luxury compared to what they had been eating. Some began to regain their strength and health. Sarah noticed that the women had formed a tight-knit group, supporting each other through their ordeal. The younger ones looked to the older women for guidance, while the older women seemed to find purpose in caring for the younger ones. One morning, Anna approached Sarah with a request. "Lieutenant, some of the women were wondering, would it be possible for us to work? To help in some way? We feel useless sitting idle." Sarah was surprised. "You want to work?" "Yes. Some of us were nurses or medical assistants. Others were clerks or cooks. We could help with laundry, cleaning, kitchen work, anything. It would help us feel less like a burden." Sarah considered this carefully. There was no regulation against it, and they could certainly use the help. The American forces were stretched thin, trying to manage the occupation and process thousands of prisoners. "Let me discuss it with Captain Morrison," Sarah said. Morrison was surprisingly agreeable. "If they want to work voluntarily, I don't see why not. We could use help in the laundry and kitchens. And if some have medical training, God knows we could use more hands in the hospital. Just make sure they're supervised and that they're not being forced." So it was arranged. Half a dozen women with nursing experience joined the medical staff. Others worked in the kitchens or handled laundry. They were paid in cigarettes and extra rations, the common currency of the occupied territories. The arrangement had an unexpected benefit. Working alongside American soldiers and other displaced persons, the German women began to see their former enemies as individuals rather than faceless adversaries. Similarly, the Americans began to understand that not every German had been a devoted Nazi. After a week, Greta was well enough to leave the hospital. She was still weak, but the pneumonia was under control, and she was eating regularly. When she returned to the barn, the other women greeted her with joy. Sarah visited that evening and found Greta sitting up, surrounded by friends. Through Anna, Greta insisted on thanking Sarah personally. "She says you saved her life," Anna translated. "She says when she was sick, she thought she would die. She had given up. But your doctor and nurses cared for her as if she were one of their own soldiers." Sarah smiled. "I'm glad you're feeling better, Greta. But it was the medical staff who saved you, not me." Anna translated, and Greta responded with a long speech in German. "She says it was your decision to treat us with humanity that saved her," Anna explained. "If you had followed strict military procedure, she would have been too afraid to admit she was sick. She would have tried to hide it and probably died. She says she will never forget what the Americans did for us." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Tell her I hope she has a long and happy life after the war. Tell all of them that." Not everyone in the American unit was pleased with the special treatment being given to the German women. Some soldiers felt that any kindness shown to Germans was a betrayal of the Allied soldiers who had died fighting them. One afternoon, Sarah heard raised voices outside the barn where the women were housed. She rushed over to find Private Carson, a young soldier from Brooklyn, arguing with Anna. "What's going on here?" Sarah demanded. Carson pointed at Anna. "She was asking about getting packages to mail home, ma'am. I told her enemy prisoners don't get mail privileges, but she kept pushing." Anna's face was flushed with anger. "I was simply asking if there was any way to send word to my family that I am alive. My mother must be sick with worry. Is that such a terrible thing? You should have thought about that before your country started a war." Carson shot back. "That's enough, Private," Sarah said sharply. "Return to your duties." Carson left, still muttering angrily. Sarah turned to Anna, who was now crying quietly. I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I did not mean to cause trouble. I thought perhaps with the war ending, there might be a way to send a letter. But he is right. We are prisoners. We have no rights. Sarah sighed. Come with me, Anna. Let's talk in my office. Once they were alone, Sarah poured 2 cups of weak coffee and handed one to Anna. The war has made everyone angry and bitter, Sarah began. Private Carson lost his best friend in the Battle of the Bulge. For him, every German uniform represents the person who killed his friend. It's not rational, but it's human. I understand, Anna said quietly. We all have losses. My brother was killed on the Eastern Front. My best friend died in a bombing raid. There is so much grief on all sides. Sarah made a decision. I can't let you send mail through official channels. But I can write a letter to the International Red Cross on your behalf, asking them to locate your family and inform them that you are alive and safe. Would that help? Anna's face lit up with hope. You would do that for me? For all of you who want it. Give me the names and last known addresses of your families, and I'll submit them all to the Red Cross. Anna impulsively hugged Sarah, then stepped back quickly, remembering their positions. I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I forgot myself. Sarah smiled. It's okay, Anna. We're all human beings first, soldiers second. 2 weeks later, news arrived that made everything feel more real and more final. Adolf Hitler was dead. Berlin had fallen to the Soviet forces. Germany was preparing to surrender unconditionally. Sarah gathered the German women to give them the news. She asked Anna to translate carefully. The war in Europe is over, Sarah announced. Germany has surrendered. Adolf Hitler is dead. The fighting has stopped. The reaction was not what Sarah had expected. Instead of anger or grief, most of the women looked simply exhausted and relieved. One older woman actually smiled. Anna explained, You must understand, Lieutenant, most of us stopped believing in Hitler's promises long ago. We knew the war was lost. We just wanted it to end before we all died. This news means we survived. We lived through the war. That is all we wanted. However, there was concern about what would happen next. Germany was being divided into occupation zones. The women needed to know which zone their homes were in because that would determine which Allied power would control their futures. The news was sobering. Berlin and much of Eastern Germany would be in the Soviet zone. Anna's family home was in the Soviet sector of Berlin. What will you do? Sarah asked Anna privately. I do not know, Anna admitted. I want to find my family. But I am afraid of what I will find. And I am afraid of the Russians. You don't have to return there immediately, Sarah said. As a POW, you'll be held for a few more weeks during the transition period. After that, you can choose where to go. Many displaced persons are settling in the Western zones or even emigrating to other countries. Leave Germany? Anna looked shocked. But it is my home. It's your choice, Sarah assured her. I just want you to know you have options. As the days passed and the reality of Germany's defeat sank in, the women began to discuss their futures. Some, like Greta, were from Western Germany and would return to areas under American or British control. Others, like Anna, faced harder choices. One evening, a group of women approached Sarah with a proposal. Anna acted as their spokesperson. Lieutenant, some of us have been talking. We know that Germany will need to be rebuilt. We know there will be work to do, people to care for, children to teach. We were wondering, would it be possible for some of us to stay here? To work for the American occupation forces? Sarah was intrigued. What kind of work did you have in mind? Whatever is needed, Anna replied. Translation services, clerical work, teaching English to German children, helping with displaced persons administration. Some of the women with nursing experience could work in hospitals. We could be useful. You would work for the Americans. Your former enemies. Anna met her eyes steadily. The war is over, Lieutenant. We must look forward, not backward. The Americans have treated us with more dignity and respect than our own military did in the last months of the war. If we can help rebuild our country while working for the occupation forces, it would give us purpose and a way to survive. Sarah promised to discuss it with her superiors. The idea had merit. The Americans needed people who spoke both German and English, who understood the local population, and who could help bridge the gap between occupiers and occupied. Captain Morrison was skeptical at first. Can we trust them? I've been watching these women for weeks, Sarah replied. They're not ideologues or fanatics. They're ordinary people who got caught up in a terrible war. They want to move on with their lives. And frankly, sir, we need the help. Eventually, approval came from higher up the chain of command. The Americans were indeed desperate for translators and support staff. A dozen of the women, including Anna, were offered positions with the Occupation Administration. Before the women could begin their new positions, there was one final matter to address: their military uniforms. Sarah organized a small ceremony. All 32 women gathered in the barn, along with Sarah and several other American soldiers who had gotten to know them over the past weeks. These uniforms represent a dark chapter in history, Sarah began, with Anna translating. They represent a war that cost millions of lives and brought unspeakable suffering. But they also represent your survival. You wore these uniforms through hardship and danger. They protected you when you had nothing else. She gestured to a large fire that had been prepared outside. Today, you have a choice. You can burn these uniforms, symbolically leaving the past behind. Or you can keep them as a reminder of what you endured and survived. The choice is yours and yours alone. One by one, the women made their decisions. Some threw their uniforms into the fire without hesitation, watching the fabric burn with expressions of relief and liberation. Others carefully folded their uniforms and kept them, placing them in the small bags of personal belongings they had accumulated. Anna stood at the edge of the fire, holding her uniform. She looked at it for a long time, remembering the day she had first put it on, full of fear about what the future would bring. She remembered the long march from the east, the cold nights, the hunger, the terror. She remembered the moment when the Americans arrived and how certain she had been that something terrible would happen. Finally, she walked to the fire and threw the uniform in. As the flames consumed it, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Sarah stood beside her. No regrets. No regrets, Anna confirmed. That person, that frightened girl in the Wehrmacht uniform, she is gone. I am someone new now. Someone who survived and who will build a better future. 3 weeks after the surrender, the International Red Cross began delivering messages from families. The system was still chaotic, and many messages took weeks or months to reach their destinations, but some were getting through. Sarah was in her office when Anna burst in, waving a piece of paper and crying, but this time with joy. They are alive. My family is alive. Anna could barely speak through her tears. My mother, my father, they survived the bombing. Our house is damaged but standing. They received word through the Red Cross that I am safe, and they sent back a message. Sarah felt her own eyes water. That's wonderful news, Anna. There is more, Anna continued, reading from the letter. My mother says my brother is alive too. He was wounded on the Eastern Front and was in a hospital when the war ended. He is coming home. We all survived, Lieutenant. My whole family survived this terrible war. Over the next few days, more letters arrived. Not all brought such happy news. Some women learned that their families were dead or missing. Others discovered their homes had been completely destroyed. But even the sad news brought a kind of closure, at least they knew. Greta received word that her husband, who had been fighting in France, was alive and in an Allied POW camp. He would be released soon. They had been married only 6 months before the war separated them. "I cannot believe it," Greta said, clutching the letter. 5 years, and we are both still alive. It is a miracle. The letters changed the atmosphere in the camp. The women who were leaving to return home did so with hope rather than dread. Those who were staying to work with the occupation forces felt more settled, knowing their families' fates. The day came when the women who were returning home had to leave. The American Army provided trucks to transport them to processing centers, where they would receive papers, rations, and directions to their home regions. Sarah watched as the women loaded their few belongings onto the trucks. It was a bittersweet moment. She had spent 6 weeks with these women, and against all odds, friendships had formed across the divide of war. Greta approached Sarah and hugged her tightly. "Through Anna," she said, "I will tell my children about you someday. I will tell them about the American lieutenant who showed mercy when she did not have to. Who treated us like human beings when we expected only punishment. You have restored my faith that there is goodness in the world." Sarah was crying now, no longer trying to hide it. "Be safe, Greta. Live a good life. That's the best way to honor the second chance you've been given." One by one, the women said goodbye. Even the ones who had been most frightened at the beginning, who had barely spoken to the Americans, managed to express their gratitude. Finally, the trucks pulled away, carrying 20 women back to their uncertain futures. 12 remained behind, including Anna, to begin their new roles with the Occupation Administration. Anna and the other remaining women were given rooms in a house that had been requisitioned for American administrative staff. They were provided with proper civilian clothes and small salaries. Their work began immediately. Anna became Sarah's official translator and assistant. She helped interview German civilians, translated documents, and served as a liaison between the occupation forces and the local population. The work was challenging. Many Germans were angry about the occupation, about the food shortages, about the destruction of their country. Others were simply trying to survive day by day. Anna found herself caught between two worlds, German by birth but working for the Americans. One day, while translating at a meeting with local officials, Anna encountered her former schoolteacher, Herr Schneider. He looked at her with cold contempt. "A collaborator," he said in German. "Serving the enemy. You should be ashamed." Anna felt the words like a slap, but she replied calmly, also in German, "The war is over, Herr Schneider. The Americans did not start it, but they are here now. Someone must help rebuild. Someone must bridge the gap. I choose to be useful rather than bitter." "You choose to betray your people," he shot back. Sarah, who had been watching, intervened. "Is there a problem, Anna?" Anna straightened her shoulders. "No problem, Lieutenant. Just a difference of opinion about how to move forward." That evening, Sarah found Anna sitting alone, looking troubled. "What Herr Schneider said bothered you," Sarah observed. "Yes," Anna admitted. "He is not the only one who thinks this way. Many Germans see those of us working with the occupation forces as traitors. They do not understand that we are trying to help our people, not hurt them." "You know the truth of what you're doing," Sarah said. "That has to be enough." "Is it enough? Sometimes I wonder. Am I really helping, or am I just helping the conquerors control my people?" Sarah sat down beside her. "Anna, I can't answer that for you. But I can tell you what I see. I see a woman who could have chosen bitterness and hatred but chose hope and cooperation instead. I see someone who is helping to feed hungry children, reunite families, and restore order out of chaos. That's not collaboration, that's humanity." 2 months after the surrender, a new shock rippled through Germany and the world. The Allied forces had liberated the concentration camps, and the full horror of the Nazi regime's crimes was becoming public knowledge. Sarah was required to attend a briefing where officials showed photographs and film footage from the camps. The images were so horrific that several officers had to leave the room. Sarah forced herself to watch, knowing that this was the reality of what had been done in the name of the country these women had served. Afterward, she struggled with what to do. Should she show this evidence to Anna and the other German women working with her? Would it be cruel? Or was it necessary for them to understand the full scope of what their government had done? She decided to tell Anna first, privately. In her office, she showed Anna some of the less graphic photographs and explained what the Allies had found. Anna looked at the images with growing horror. Her face turned white, and her hands began to shake. "No," she whispered. "This cannot be true. This is propaganda. It must be." "It's not propaganda, Anna," Sarah said gently. "We have witnesses. We have survivors. We have the camps themselves. This really happened." Anna began to cry, deep sobs that shook her whole body. "We did not know. I swear to you, we did not know. We heard rumors, whispers about camps, but we thought they were work camps. We thought, oh God. What have we done? What has my country done?" Sarah let her cry, offering no comfort because there was none to give. This was something Anna had to process on her own. Finally, Anna looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I understand now if you want us to leave. If you can no longer work with us. How can you even look at us, knowing this?" "Because you didn't know," Sarah replied. "And even if you had known, I believe you would have been powerless to stop it. The guilt belongs to those who gave the orders and those who carried them out. But all Germans will have to live with the shame of what was done in their name. That's your burden now." Anna wiped her eyes. "What do we do with this knowledge?" "You face it. You acknowledge it. You work to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. And you help build a new Germany that is nothing like the one that committed these crimes." The revelation about the concentration camps changed everything. The work of the occupation forces took on a new urgency. It was no longer just about maintaining order and rebuilding infrastructure, it was about fundamentally transforming German society. Anna and the other German women working with the Americans had to confront uncomfortable truths about their country and their own complicity, however unwitting, in what had happened. Some could not bear the weight of the knowledge and quit. But Anna stayed. "I must stay," she told Sarah. "I must help make this right, even though I know it can never truly be made right. If I run away now, I am no better than those who committed these crimes and then tried to escape responsibility." Sarah put her in charge of a program to help survivors of the camps who were trying to rebuild their lives. It was heartbreaking work. Anna met people who had lost entire families, who bore the physical and psychological scars of unimaginable suffering. One day, a woman named Ruth came to the office. She was looking for any information about her husband and 3 children, who had been taken away 3 years earlier. Anna helped her search through the records. They found the names. All 4 had died at Auschwitz. Ruth did not cry. She simply stared at the papers, her face expressionless. "Thank you for finding out," she said quietly. "At least now I know. At least the not knowing is over." After Ruth left, Anna broke down. Sarah found her in the supply closet, crying so hard she could barely breathe. "I cannot do this," Anna sobbed. "Every day, more stories. More horror, more pain. And I wear the face of the people who did this to them. How can I face them? How can I help them when I am German?" Sarah knelt beside her. "You face them with honesty and humility. You acknowledge what was done. You work as hard as you can to help them. And you remember that you're not responsible for what happened, but you are responsible for what happens now, in this moment, when they need help." Gradually, Anna found her strength again. She learned to carry the weight of Germany's guilt while still functioning, still helping, still working toward a better future. As autumn turned to winter, life in occupied Germany became harder. Food was scarce. Coal for heating was rationed. Thousands of displaced persons wandered the roads, looking for lost family members or simply a place to survive the winter. The American forces set up soup kitchens and distribution centers. Anna and her colleagues worked long hours, processing refugees, distributing supplies, and trying to bring order to chaos. One particularly cold December day, Anna was working at a refugee center when an elderly woman collapsed while waiting in line. Anna rushed to help her and was shocked to recognize her. It was Frau Müller, her old piano teacher from Berlin. "Frau Müller. What are you doing here? Where is your family?" The old woman looked up at Anna with confused eyes, not recognizing her at first. Then clarity came. "Anna? Little Anna Weber? Is that really you?" Anna helped her to a chair and brought her hot soup. Slowly, Frau Müller's story emerged. Her house had been destroyed in the bombing. Her husband had died in the rubble. Her son had been killed on the Eastern Front. She had been wandering for months, surviving on charity and scraps. Anna immediately arranged for Frau Müller to receive proper housing, food, and medical care. She visited her every day, bringing small luxuries like real coffee and warm blankets. "You were always a good girl, Anna," Frau Müller said one day. "Your mother would be proud of what you're doing, helping people like this." Have you heard anything about my family?" Anna asked, hardly daring to hope. "I got one message through the Red Cross months ago, but nothing since." Frau Müller shook her head. "The Soviet sector is very closed off. It's difficult to get news. But I heard your family's building was still standing. That's something." It was something. Anna clung to that small piece of hope. Christmas approached, the first Christmas of peace after 6 years of war. Sarah and the other American personnel were planning to celebrate with a small party. On impulse, Sarah invited Anna and the other German women working with them. "Are you sure that's appropriate?" Anna asked. "We are still German, still former members of the Wehrmacht." "The war is over," Sarah replied. "It's Christmas. A time for peace and goodwill. Besides, I consider you a friend, Anna. Friends celebrate Christmas together." The party was a simple affair, some music on a scratchy record player, cookies that the American soldiers' families had sent from home, and weak punch made with military rations. But it felt almost normal, almost like peace. Private Johnson, who had initially been hostile to the German women, approached Anna with an awkward expression. "Miss Weber, I wanted to apologize for how I acted when you first arrived. I was being a jerk. You've worked hard and helped a lot of people. I respect that." Anna shook his hand. "No apology necessary, Private. We have all had to learn to see past uniforms to the people underneath. That is what peace means, I think." At midnight, someone suggested they sing Christmas carols. They started with "Silent Night," and Anna's clear voice joined in, singing in German while the Americans sang in English. For a moment, the different languages blended into one song of hope and peace. Sarah looked around the room at the Americans and Germans celebrating together and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, genuine hope for the future. In February 1946, Sarah received orders. She was being transferred back to the United States. The war was over, her service was done, and it was time to go home. The news hit Anna hard. Over the past 10 months, Sarah had become more than her commanding officer, she had become her closest friend, her mentor, and the person who had shown her that it was possible to move beyond the hatred and division of war. On Sarah's last day, Anna requested a private meeting. They met in Sarah's office, which was now mostly empty, packed up for the next occupant. "I want to thank you," Anna began, her voice shaky. "When we first met, when we surrendered, I was so frightened. I don't know what I expected. Punishment, cruelty, revenge. Instead, you showed us dignity. You saw us as human beings, not just enemy prisoners." Sarah smiled. "You made it easy," Anna. You were never really my enemy, just another person caught up in circumstances beyond your control. That day, when we could not remove our uniforms, when we had nothing, you could have humiliated us. You could have followed the rules strictly and stripped us bare, taken away our last shred of dignity. But you didn't. You found a way to treat us as human beings. That one act of kindness changed everything. I did what any decent person would do, Sarah protested. No, Anna said firmly. You did what a decent person should do, but many would not have. You set the tone for how all of us were treated. Because of you, we were given a second chance. Because of you, I have a job, a purpose, a future. Because of you, I learned that it's possible to build bridges even after terrible wars. Sarah felt tears running down her face. You would have found your way regardless, Anna. You're strong and smart and compassionate. Those qualities were in you all along. Perhaps. But you helped me find them again when I had lost myself. They embraced, two women from opposite sides of a terrible war who had somehow become friends. What will you do now? Sarah asked. Will you stay here, or will you try to return to Berlin? I will stay here for now, Anna decided. The work is important. And when the situation in Berlin becomes clearer, when the borders are more stable, then I will try to return and find my family. But I will carry what you taught me with me always. And what did I teach you? Anna thought for a moment. That dignity and respect are not earned, they are inherent to all human beings and must be given freely. That mercy is not weakness. That the way to end cycles of hatred and revenge is to choose compassion even when it's difficult. And that sometimes the most important act of courage is a simple act of kindness. Sarah returned to Ohio, married her childhood sweetheart, and became a teacher as she had planned before the war. But she never forgot her time in Germany or the women she had met there. In 1950, she received a letter from Germany. It was from Anna. The letter told of Anna's eventual return to Berlin, where she had found her family, battered and changed by the war, but alive. It told of her work helping to rebuild the city, translating for the American mission, and eventually starting a school to teach English to German children. I tell my students about you, Anna wrote. I tell them about the American lieutenant who showed mercy to German prisoners when she did not have to. I tell them that this is how we must move forward, by seeing the humanity in others, even our former enemies. Especially our former enemies. The letter included a photograph. Anna stood in front of a newly rebuilt school, smiling, surrounded by children. She looked healthy, happy, and hopeful. Sarah put the letter in a box with her other war mementos, not the medals or commendations, but the personal things, photographs of the women she had met, the thank you notes some had sent, the memories of a time when she had faced a difficult choice and had chosen compassion over procedure. She wrote back, beginning what would become a lifelong correspondence and friendship. They never forgot that day in April 1945 when a group of frightened women in tattered uniforms had stood before their captors and asked for basic human dignity. And they never forgot that sometimes the most important decisions in history are not made by generals or politicians, but by ordinary people choosing kindness in small moments that ripple out to change the world. The uniforms were eventually burned or discarded, as were most of the physical remnants of that terrible war. But the lessons learned, about dignity, mercy, and our shared humanity, those endured, passed down through stories and memories to new generations who would, hopefully, build a world where such choices would no longer be necessary. Because everyone, regardless of which uniform they wore or which side they fought on, deserved to be treated as a human being. That was the lesson of the uniforms that couldn't be removed. That was the lesson Sarah and Anna learned together and carried with them for the rest of their lives. This story, while fictional, is inspired by the real experiences of countless individuals on all sides of World War II who had to navigate the complex aftermath of conflict and find ways to rebuild their lives and their humanity in the ruins of war.